The wind clawed at the lonely ranch house as though it wanted inside, rattling the shutters and sweeping dust along the porch. The sky hung low and gray over the Wyoming plains, promising a bitter night. Inside, Rancher Thomas Caldwell was setting one place at the table out of habit, though he knew he'd be eating alone again. Thanksgiving Eve wasn't supposed to feel like a burden, but after losing his wife and going years without family nearby, the holiday had turned into a quiet ritual. Cook a small meal, thank the Lord for the land that still held him, and turn in early. The only sound came from the soft crackle of the fire and the old clock ticking on the wall. He was slicing vegetables when he heard something of faint tapping, unsure at first if it came from the storm. Then it came again, clearer this time. Knock. Out here, miles from town. Nobody just showed up unannounced. He wiped his hands on a towel, walked to the door, and pulled it open to a sight that made his breath catch. A woman stood there, shivering, her coat thin, her cheeks raw from windburn. Behind her were 3 children, 2 boys and a little girl, no older than 5. All of them were trembling, their clothes too light for the cold, their eyes sunken with hunger. "Sir," the woman whispered, nearly swallowed by the wind. "Please, please. We didn't know where else to go." Thomas didn't hesitate. "Get in here," he said, his voice sharp, not from anger, but concern. "All of you. Now." The moment the door shut behind them, warmth began seeping into their frozen limbs. The children clung to each other, and the little girl stared up at him with eyes too tired for someone so young. "My name's Grace," the woman said once she had caught her breath. "These are my kids, Luke, Jonah, and Emma. We haven't eaten since yesterday morning. We walked from the highway after our car ran out of gas. I thought maybe we'd find someone before the cold got bad." Thomas had no idea how far they'd walked, but judging by the state of their shoes and the blistered red of their hands, it had been miles. "You found someone," he said firmly. "You're safe now." The kids stood silent, watching his every movement as though afraid he'd change his mind. He knelt to their level. "You kids hungry?" All 3 nodded, quick and desperate. "Then come on," he said, rising. "Let's get some food in you." He set out the whole Thanksgiving meal he'd planned for himself: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, biscuits, and the pumpkin pie he baked from his late wife's recipe. Grace's eyes filled with tears when she saw it. "Sir, we can't eat your holiday," he said gently but firmly as he pulled out chairs and set plates. "This table was set for someone. Looks like I finally know who." She tried to protest again, but he shook his head. "Thanksgiving ain't about eating alone." When the children took their first bites, they ate with the trembling urgency of the starving, but politely, trying not to inhale the food, though their bodies begged them to. Grace didn't touch her plate at first. She simply watched them, hand over her mouth, shoulders shaking. Thomas placed his hand softly on the back of her chair. "You need to eat too." She blinked away tears. "Thank you. I didn't know how much longer." Her voice cracked. He didn't push her to finish. They ate, and as they did, color slowly returned to the children's faces. Emma even smiled, shyly, when Thomas passed her a second biscuit. After dinner, he stoked the fire and brought down extra blankets. The kids sat close to the hearth, letting the heat thaw them from the inside out. Grace held her youngest in her lap, brushing her hair with soft strokes. Thomas leaned on the mantel. "Where were you headed?" he asked. Grace hesitated before answering. "Montana. My sister said we could stay with her until I get back on my feet, but she's a day's drive from here and our car. She trails off." Thomas knew the rest. "No gas, no money, no hope. Their father?" he asked cautiously. She looked at a fire, jaw tight. "Gone, a long time ago." He nodded, understanding more than she realized. They were quiet for a moment. The storm outside beat harder against the walls, the kind that could kill a person caught in it. "Well," he said, "you're not going anywhere tonight." She opened her mouth to object again, but he lifted a hand. "This house has plenty of room. You'll take the guest rooms." Tomorrow's Thanksgiving we'll have a proper breakfast. Then we'll figure out the car. Luke, the oldest boy, looked up. We can help, he said quickly. We know chores. We're good at M.K. That nearly broke Thomas's heart. Kids shouldn't have to barter survival. You're guests, he said softly, not workers. The boy stared at him like he didn't know how to process that. They settled in for the night. Thomas brought out his wife's old quilts, each one hand-stitched. Grace ran her fingers along the fabric, whispering, "These are beautiful." She made M, he said, his voice low. Grace looked at him differently, than less like he was a stranger who had saved them, more like a man who understood loss. As the children slept, she stayed by the fire. Thomas brewed tea and handed her a warm mug. "You're safe here," he said again, not because she needed the words, but because he knew she needed to believe them. A single tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't think anyone would stop for us. At one point, I thought maybe we weren't meant to make it." Thomas's jaw tightened. "No," he said. "Don't think like that. You don't even know us," she whispered. "Yet you opened your home." "'Cause someone ought to," he said. "World's full of people who walk on by. I'm trying not to be one of them." She stared into her tea, then at the sleeping children. "They deserve better," she murmured. "And I'm trying. I really am. I can see that," he replied. "Kids don't smile like yours did tonight unless they know they're loved." She wiped her eyes. The fire warmed the room, flickering gold on their faces. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something gentle settled between them. Trust, fragile but real. They talked for an hour more about nothing and everything. She told him about her late-night shifts, the eviction that pushed them into the car, the fear that came with every mile. He told her about ranch life, the loneliness after his wife died, the way holidays lost their shine. When she finally fell asleep, sitting upright, he draped a quilt over her shoulders. In the morning, Thanksgiving sunlight spilled across the frost-covered fields. The storm had passed, leaving the world bright and clean. The kids woke to the smell of pancakes and scrambled eggs. Thomas cooked while Emma sat on the counter, swinging her legs, telling him all about her favorite dolls. Grace appeared in the doorway, looking rested for the first time in ages. "You didn't have to cook all this," she said. "I wanted to," he replied simply. After breakfast, Thomas took Luke and Jonah outside to check the car. The engine was fine, the tank was simply dry. Grace watched them from the porch, Emma clinging to her leg. "I can buy gas once my sister sends money," Grace said. Thomas shook his head. "Already taken care of," he said, holding up the filled can. "Tank'll be full in 5 minutes." Grace blinked. "Why?" "Because it's Thanksgiving," he said. "Because you deserve a fresh start. And because I don't want those kids walking the highway again." Her lip trembled. "You have no idea what this means." "I think I do," he said quietly. They loaded the car. The kids hugged him twice. Grace lingered a moment longer. "I don't know how to repay you." "Don't," he said. "Just get there safe." She nodded, swallowing hard. She opened the car door, then paused. "Thomas." He met her eyes. "Yes, ma'am? You gave us back hope." He tipped his hat, feeling something in his chest tighten in a way it hadn't in years. "Drive careful now." He watched as the car followed the dusty road, the children waving through the back window until they disappeared behind a bend. The ranch felt quieter than usual when he walked back inside, but the silence didn't feel empty this time. It felt like something had changed, softened. He sat at the table, the same table that only the night before had held 4 hungry strangers, now bound to his heart. For the first time since his wife passed, Thomas Caldwell bowed his head on Thanksgiving and felt gratitude, not for the land or the solitude, but for the knock on the door that turned strangers into something almost like family. And though he didn't yet know how, deep down he sensed he would see them again. Some bonds, after all, begin with a single word spoken from a place of kindness. Sid,